Hey, welcome. So let's talk about social media. In that super fast-paced world, what's the secret sauce? Is it having a rock-solid long-term plan all mapped out? Or is it all about that spontaneous creative spark, reacting to things as they happen? Well, today we are diving right into that exact question. So let me ask you this directly. When you think about managing a social media account, is it more like a super detailed blueprint? Or is it kind of like a creative free-for-all on a blank canvas? Because that's the fundamental question that a group of researchers wanted to get to the bottom of. And we're going to be digging into this really fascinating study from 2016, published in the Public Relations Review. What they did was they sat down and had these long, in-depth interviews with 12 social media managers from all over North America to find out how strategy really comes together in the real world. Okay, so before we get into what the pros actually told them, let's first look at the theory. What does the ideal strategy playbook even look like? What's the right way you're supposed to do it? Well, the theory basically breaks it down into two different ways of thinking. First up, you've got what's called building mode. The best way to think about this is like an architect, right? They have a detailed blueprint. Every single thing is guided by these preset goals. And then you've got dwelling mode. This is totally different. This is more like being a hiker on a trail you've never been on before. You're just reacting to whatever comes up, making decisions on the fly to get past whatever's in front of you. And this idea then builds up into this three-level model for creating a community. So the theory says you start at the bottom, at level 1, just building basic trust. You gotta have that foundation. Once that's solid, you can climb up to level 2, where you start creating real brand ambassadors, people who love what you do. And then the very top, the peak, is level 3, uniting that whole community around some kind of common project. But, and this is so important, not every brand or organization is supposed to get to that top level. It doesn't mean you failed if you don't. Whether you can get there really depends on a ton of things. What your goals are, what kind of resources you have, and frankly, how engaged your audience even is. It's all about finding the right level for your brand. So, okay, that's the textbook answer. That's the theory. But what actually happens when that perfect playbook meets the messy real world? This is where the study gets super interesting because it shows us what those 12 managers were really up to. I mean, listen to this quote from one of the managers. "We started to open accounts everywhere without having a strategy." This just perfectly captures how things often started. It wasn't some grand plan. It was messy. It was experimental. It was basically, let's just get on these platforms first and we'll figure out the rules of the game later. And you can really see how the whole profession has grown up over time. It all began in that chaotic, experimental phase. Then it kind of shifted into a reactive phase, especially as big news stories started breaking on social media. And that brings us to today, where we're in a much more integrated phase, where social media is a key piece of these big 360-degree campaigns. So yeah, that chaos from the early days, it's been replaced. Planning is now completely standard. Most of these pros are using tools like editorial calendars to map out their content, make sure they have a good mix, and work together with all the other departments. Okay, so remember that three-level model? How did the pros actually do? Well, this finding is huge. It turns out every single one of the organizations they studied was successful at building trust. That's level 1. And all of them also managed to create ambassadors, level 2. But only half of them ever got to that top level, to the common project. It just goes to show you how tough that final step really is. Now, this might be the most surprising thing they found. For something called social media, the actual social part can be pretty limited. That dream of having these deep, two-way conversations, it's still mostly just a dream. For a lot of these brands, engagement really just boiled down to answering comments, not creating a real dialogue. But hey, while that real back and forth might be lacking, one area that has gotten incredibly sophisticated is how they find influencers. I mean, they're using a whole bunch of tactics, from simple team brainstorms to deep, almost anthropological research online. Finding the right people to partner with has become a huge focus. So what's the big takeaway here? We've got the strict architect in building mode on one side and the spontaneous hiker in dwelling mode on the other. So which one wins? Well, the study's conclusion is that the answer isn't one or the other. It's about mastering both. And the key idea here is something called organizational ambidexterity. I just love this definition. It's the ability to wear two hats at once. You wear the hat for the job you have to do today, while also wearing the hat for the job you're going to have to do tomorrow. It's about being brilliant at the present and the future, all at the same time. And this is where it all clicks. The best, most effective social media managers are ambidextrous. They use that structured building mode to plan out their content calendars, but they also stay in a constant state of dwelling mode, always ready to pivot, to react, to improvise based on what's happening right now. Which brings us to this final, massive question. If that deep two-way communication is the ultimate goal, but brands are struggling to do it themselves, then how do we get there? The research leaves us with this final thought to chew on. Is building real, genuine partnerships with influencers maybe the only key that can finally unlock truly authentic conversations online?